and gaping inequalities globally. 3 billion people around the world have no access to running water, and you know that within countries like the UK or the US, it's the poorest who are being hit hardest. It's also, though, a contest about nationalism versus internationalism, because that's going to be at the heart of the way in which the response is built. And I think there's also an absolutely vital question about the role of government. It is a new economic and social contract if we learn the lessons properly, and that's the only way to address the social and economic ills as well as the health ones.
Well, we're just talking about the social and economic contract. Do you think that will change now?
Well, I hope it will change, and the undervaluation of all sorts of sectors of society that are now recognized to be absolutely central. That key workers are obviously in the health service, there are carers, but if you're stacking shelves in a supermarket, you're playing an absolutely vital role. If you're growing food and you're part of the food distribution chain, you're part of a vital role. And we know that, especially the last 10 years in the UK, but globally over a longer period, the growth of inequality, wealth inequality as well as income inequality, has scarred those countries.
And yet when you have someone like Boris Johnson in that very heartfelt video when he left the hospital for convalescence, talking about the NHS saving his life, in a sense, the bedrock of society becomes something like the NHS. Do you think that is a whole cultural and emotional shift?
We could have a 1945 moment, but the danger is that we have a 1980 moment. Remember, in 1918, a land fit for heroes was promised, but in fact, the lessons of the pre-war period were not learned. The social safety net was not fixed or built. And we led through the 30s, the mass unemployment of the 30s, and then obviously globally, the failure of the League of Nations and the collapse of the world into war. We know that story. But the post-1945 moment was a different moment. And I do believe that this crisis, so global, so universal, is so big that any notion of quote-unquote return is just not on. There is a danger that the xenophobes and the nationalists see this as their opportunity. And I think it's very, very important that we understand that this politics of anger, this politics of demonization, has no answers at all when it comes to questions of health or economy that you've been debating tonight.
And yet you have Donald Trump railing against the WHO and their handling of the coronavirus outbreak. Is Trump right that the WHO didn't move quickly enough?
Well, the WHO certainly made mistakes, and the Chinese certainly practiced denialism that had deadly effects. But the truth about the World Health Organization is that it needs to be stronger, not weaker. And there will be no greater health security if we undermine the World Health Organization. I want your viewers to know that the danger of the cuts that are being discussed by President Trump for the World Health Organization, there are potential death sentences for people who rely on the vaccines, the nutrition programs, the polio eradication that is funded by the American contribution to the World Health Organization. Now, I can tell you that the danger that the post-COVID world falls into a US versus China standoff is very, very real. The Chinese are going to say it's their system that has proved its worth. I think it's very important to say, yes, there are democratic governments like in the United States that have not handled this well, but countries like Germany show that open, free societies can and will be able to deal with crises like this.
Just coming slightly closer to home, Ursula von der Leyen actually apologised on behalf of the EU to Italy today for its failure to help with the coronavirus hit. Do you think this pandemic actually poses an existential threat to the EU?
The way in which Italy has been felt to be on its own, I think, has not been a good advertisement for the way in which the European Union can pull together. It's made ideas of European solidarity seem unreal. And so I think what you're seeing from President von der Leyen today is a determination that Europe will actually play its part collectively as well as individually. Europe has to pull together as a continent. And I think that's going to be very important, not just in health and economic terms, but frankly also in political terms. And it's absolutely vital that it doesn't see or find the COVID crisis as a spear aimed at its very heart.
David Milliband, thank you very much indeed. As we emerge from